couple other things I wanted to point out in your book, too, that I really loved was the life story. And, again, that comes with an example in a blank form. You want to tell people about the life story and how that can be helpful?
I would just love to, because that is really my most favorite part of the book. Because in memory loss and in dementia, communication is just so important. Creating a life story is a very helpful tool because it introduces your person to others who don't necessarily know them, who are going to be helping you with caregiving. A life story, despite what it says, is a single page. And again, it's for people who don't know the person, but it gives them talking points. The reader can find an example of it, and I'm just going to review some of the headlines of the life story. My name is, but I like to be called. It says my wife's name is, and maybe my children's. There's also a section for grandchildren because grandchildren are now adults, and they're coming and being with the grandparents. I think it's important to talk about the grandchildren being in there. It has a place for their birthplace or perhaps their parents' names or their siblings' names. And then there's a place for my interests. And there's also a section for my special care needs, and I'm going to go into that for a minute, and the favorite foods and snacks or beverages that they would like. My sample life story indicates that Jerry enjoys model trains, that he has one set up in his garage, and that he also likes watching baseball games on the TV. Just by reading these three things, you have a lot to talk about to begin a conversation. The occasional caregiver, in other words, an actual caregiver, not just a visitor, also finds that Jerry uses hearing aids. So if he's not hearing you, go look for his hearing aids. And that he needs you to look right at him when you're speaking. It mentions that he needs a reminder to go to the bathroom every 2 hours, but he can go on his own. And it tells the caregiver that during the day he likes iced water. If you want to get somebody to drink something, what do they like? Some people like room temperature. Some people like lemon in their water. Some people like iced water. Putting things like that down on the life story is really helpful to people who don't know the person. Another thing that they've used the life story for is to place it by the bed of a person who's either been hospitalized or has been put into a rehab situation or a hospice setting, away from their homes. Their caregiver isn't there, so the life story speaks for the person who's unable to begin the conversation. And you had mentioned you can always communicate with a person with Alzheimer's. It's just easier sometimes if you're given those words of cues to get them started to communicate with you, that they can feel comfortable with you if you use the word baseball or something like that. It helps other people talk to your person, and I think that's so key.
And many times they can't use words to communicate back with us, and we have to learn to look at the smile and the dimples and the eyes, the glint in the eyes and things, but using their keywords that they're familiar with triggers a response. The other thing in the book that I wanted to mention is functional skill limitations. And I think that that's a really interesting point that most people don't think much about. Can you explain what you mean by that in a nutshell?
Yes, I can. Functional skill is your person's ability, like slower reflexes or decreasing vision, decreasing hearing, whether they're in pain. It's something that you have to go in and look at the person, and that's, again, on the care plan. It's very important to know where their functional limitations are and what they might be, whether it's they can't see as well or whether they can't hear as well. I start with driving. Do they have the ability, the reflexes to drive? My mother didn't have the strength to drive.
Okay, and I think, again, very, very important thing for people to understand. I highly recommend this book. I think it's one that people will use and want to share, and it will be a resource book. It's one of those books, the way you've laid it out is you don't have to read it all in one sitting. You can target the topics that you really need help with at the time and then come back to it later. And, again, plenty of room to go ahead and write and make notes of what's working, what's not working. And I did put in the chat box your Facebook page and then also the Amazon link for people if they want to go ahead and purchase the book. Any final comments that you would like to make about how you think people could utilize this book in their lives, Cheryl?
I would. I've got one last story, which it looks like I don't quite have time to tell.
Oh, it will be fine. We'll be fine. Go ahead.
Okay. It has to do with my husband's mother. We talked on the phone a lot, and in one particular conversation, I noticed that she wasn't answering my questions except with a yes or a no. So I got right on the phone with her doctor, and long story short, she had a stage 4 brain tumor. When they went in and did the MRI, they immediately declared her incapacitated, and she was never able to communicate her needs or wishes, her thoughts again, and it was just a sudden thing. I've got a final chapter in my book called The Paper Chase. The Paper Chase addresses locating and creating or completing all your financial, legal, and your advance directives. And the point of my story with her is that she had failed to complete her advance directives. Her husband had died. She'd been living alone for 9 years. She was a pharmacist. She was very articulate. And the heartbreaker was that in a time of crisis, we actually had to go to court to get appointed as her power of attorney so that we could make decisions. And in her case, when she needed us most to be her advocate, to speak and act on her behalf, we didn't know her wishes, and the family was in disagreement about her care. We were fighting over decisions about yes or no to surgery for this brain tumor or chemotherapy, radiation. And I really believe, and I've been told by a lot of people, that the book explains some of these important papers. It's not meant to be legal advice, but it is certainly a good storyboard to formulate a plan and to look and see what you might want to get in order years before they're needed. And it isn't just physical caregiving. It is also the paper trail, trying to get all these medications and contacts, and again, the important advance directive. Do you want a feeding tube, or would you prefer not to?
And it's amazing, too. I mean, I was a primary caregiver for my dad and for my mom. This isn't second nature to most. And so you've got that denial and that resistance on top of trying to get all this stuff organized, and then you throw in the family dynamics, and, what a party.
This book is not written to nursing. This book is written to the family caregiver, and it's got topics that they're daily topics. It doesn't take, from start to finish, over 3 hours to skim through and read it and make your highlights.
I mean, even though you've written it towards family, it's very powerful for the professional. Like I said, I highly recommend the book. I think it's really very well done and will be just a great resource for people not just dealing with dementia, but life in general. And helping us plan, even if we don't have anything coming up, it gives you food for thought of what we should all be doing as individuals to better control our lives and better plan for the future.
Well, Lori, I so much appreciate you allowing me to speak with you and to speak to your family caregivers today. I've been looking at your website and Alzheimer's Speak. I really appreciate everything that you're doing for the people that are involved in this hot balloon journey.
Well, thank you. And the easiest way for people to get a hold of you, on Facebook, put in Dare to Care Elders, and on Amazon, search Dare to Care, Cheryl Carmichael. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Lori. I appreciate it.
Bye now.